Hello and welcome back to another day of Minecraft and Reddit stories. Today I'm going to try something a little different today. I'm going to be reading scary Reddit stories while playing the Horrorland mod in Minecraft. And without further ado, here go the stories. Okay, here goes this first story. Creepiest experience I've ever had while driving. My brother 25 male and I 23 female were driving home from the Watershed Festival in Washington. We were driving back around 3 a.m. through the gorge a bit outside of Portland. If you're not familiar with this area, the highway runs right along a river and you're surrounded by trees. Since it was 3 a.m., there were no other cars in sight, just pitch black. My brother and I were listening to a true crime podcast, which definitely contributed to the mood, regrettably. There are no cars around us until we suddenly see a car up in front of us. When they see us, they suddenly turn on their right turn signal and pull off the 2-lane road. My brother found this odd, but I thought, hey, maybe they just don't want us behind them. Fair enough. I realized very quickly this wasn't the case because once they pulled back onto the road behind us, they suddenly sped up until they were right on our tail. Then they moved into the left lane and cut back into the right lane in front of us. Odd, but I've seen weirder. This is where things take a turn. Once they've cut in front of us, they put on their right turn signal again and pull off. Now my brother and I are getting a little creeped out because keep in mind it is pitch black outside. There are no other cars and you can really only go one direction. We pass them again and I tell my brother to move into the left lane and just keep going. Once we pass them, they pull back onto the road again. They speed up in the right lane until they are about 500 feet behind us. I'm keeping an eye on them in the rearview mirror. They suddenly switch their lights off. My skin crawled. We have no idea where they are, but we know they're behind us. Suddenly our car's blind spot monitor goes off and we know their car is right behind us. The car suddenly switches their lights back on and speeds past us. By this point, we saw another car's headlights coming behind us, and a sigh of relief washed over me. We didn't see the car again after that. I'm 99.9% sure it was just some bored teenager trying to give us the creeps, and they did a great job, but I sometimes wonder if they had other intentions. Moving on to the next story. I manage a house where every tenant disappears after 1 month. The third tenant was a pale guy, tattoos all over his arm and a large piercing in his ear. He looked sick and walked slowly. He told me he wanted to live in that house to get over his past, and I didn't want to ask for details. What really caught him was the forest view from the porch. He signed the contract on the spot, and the very next day his moving truck was parked in the garage. 2 weeks later, I realized I'd left my folder with some documents in the house and called the guy. No answer. I decided to drive out there and found the place empty, which was strange. He'd brought a lot of stuff during the move. His car wasn't in the garage, but I rang the bell anyway. Nothing. The door was unlocked and I stepped inside, convinced something was wrong. But there was nothing to see. The house was empty, no furniture, dusty, just like it had been when I first showed it to him. A few months earlier, while eating breakfast, I got a call from a property owner who said she'd found me on Instagram. She told me she needed an experienced, fast-moving realtor to handle rental contracts for her house. And I lied, said I was that guy, even though I'd only had my license for a little over a year. Her voice was old, raspy, almost broken, like someone with throat problems. She said she lived abroad and needed someone local. I wouldn't even have to look for tenants, she pitched. There was already a list of people interested, and they'd meet me at the house. I wasn't too excited. It didn't sound like much of an opportunity until she mentioned my commission. I nearly choked on the sandwich I was eating. I repeated the number back to her, sure she'd made a mistake, but she insisted it was right. That amount would be handed to me in cash once the tenant signed and moved in. The only condition she said was that if a contract was broken due to my negligence or choice, I'd have to pay 1 month's rent. On paper, it didn't sound bad. I accepted right away. The next day, I went to see the property. It was huge, isolated, no close neighbors. Inside, there was expensive wooden furniture pieces, sculptures, installations that must have cost a fortune. The porch opened up to a wide view of a forest. Big wooden chairs faced the woods, and the owner made a point of stressing that they could not be moved from their place. I imagined myself retired there, sipping coffee, bird watching. Coincidentally, the first tenants were a retired couple escaping the chaos of the city. When they signed, I went home torn between excitement and anxiety. Would the owner really pay me that much? I was broke. But a few days later, a suitcase showed up at my doorstep with the full amount in cash, stacks of $100 bills wrapped in rubber bands. Weird, yeah, but not weird enough to stop me from trading it in for a new car. About a month later, the owner called again, said the couple didn't work out and new tenants wanted to see the house that day. I didn't ask questions, couldn't complain about another commission. This time it was two women, a couple. One was a writer who told me she'd chosen the place to work on her next novel. Signing was easy and another suitcase of money arrived the same way. Life was good, but honestly I barely had any other clients. All my golden eggs were tied to this strange owner I barely knew. Her name and info looked fake. Still, with the new tenants in, I figured I wouldn't hear from her for a while. Wrong. Another month later, same story. The woman had left, another new tenant. I was happy but suspicious. Why did everyone leave that house so quickly? Curiosity got me, so I called one of the last tenants. The number didn't exist anymore. I tried the old couple too, same thing. After the third tenant, I tried to forget it. Not my problem. Who cared if they stayed or left? My fat commission was all I needed. Then like clockwork, a month later she called again. This time she sounded excited, said the new clients were special and she'd pay me double. I thought about asking questions, but double was too good. That kind of money could help me put a down payment on an apartment. I drove to the house determined to sign as fast as possible. I got there early and snooped around. No sign of anyone ever living there, not even a pin drop during moving chaos, nothing. When the bell rang, I opened the door to a young couple holding a newborn baby wrapped in a blanket. I showed them the house, my stomach churning at what I could be part of. And of course they loved it. The dad talked about how his kid would grow up running in the fields, exploring the forest, a childhood he never had. They signed right away. My hands were shaking when I handed over the paper. The next day was supposed to be their move-in. I went home and couldn't sleep, tossed and turned thinking I might be helping some crime happen. Around 1 a.m., I gave up and drove back to the house. I needed to check everything with my own eyes. I searched every corner, bedrooms, closets, everything. Nothing, but I'd seen 3 moving trucks unload here. Not a single mark on the floor. Impossible. I stepped onto the porch, resigned that I never figure it out. Sat on one of those big wooden chairs thinking what I might have missed. That's when I saw it. Something shiny stuck in a crack in the chair. I pulled it out. It was a piercing, probably from the last tenant. On the needle was a small red stain, blood. I reached into the crack again, feeling around and touched something soft. I pulled it out. It was an ear. Darkened, rotted with a torn hole where the piercing had been ripped out. I decided to push the chair to see what was underneath it, and with a lot of effort, I managed to move it a foot to the side. On the wooden floor there was a symbol I couldn't recognize, circles and shapes carved into the boards right under where the chair had been, like some sort of ritual. There were more traces of blood there. I froze staring at it, heart pounding. What snapped me out of it was a laugh that came out of nowhere. A woman's laugh, echoing from the darkness of the forest. It started low and distant, but quickly grew louder, hysterical. Then more laughter followed, all of them female, all coming closer, aimed at me. It was like a whole crowd was hiding in those woods. The sound grew louder and louder until the instincts took over. I bolted to my car, started it up, and spat down the road. Next day I called the couple and told them the deal was off. Made up some excuse. They weren't happy, but I didn't care. Soon after the owner called me again. I didn't pick up and blocked her number. But the calls kept coming from all sorts of different numbers. I answered one and it was her voice, angry. "You broke our pact. The rent will be collected at the end of the month." She kept repeating it and I hung up every time. I went to the police, they went to the property, found nothing, then came back pissed because I had wasted their time. There were no ears, no marks, no nothing. Today is the 23rd, and next week the month ends. I keep wondering if I did the right thing, if maybe I should have just carried on with that commission. Every day that passes, I feel the panic building. My phone is always turned off, and I've rented a room in a roadside hotel outside the state. But even here, every night, I dream of that laugh. Okay, here goes the next story. I think my girlfriend is a monster. My girlfriend, 21, and I, 23, have been dating for a few months now. We both bonded over the great outdoors, guns, and big trucks. When I first met her, there wasn't much to say but how cute she was. Add that with the fact she knew how to handle a gun and drove a truck with one hand on some dirt, uneven trails. She's perfect, honestly. But I began to notice some odd stuff as things started to settle down after the high of our new relationship. She rarely spoke about her parents or any family members, never even got to learn where she was from, or to be specific, the exact location. All I got was the usual, "I flock from the Midwest," she said it with a chuckle, like she just told a great joke, and gave me this look with a twinkle in her eyes that suggested she didn't want to talk about it anymore. So I dropped it like I always did. Her residence wasn't the only thing that bothered me. She also doesn't seem to sleep from what I know. Well, she does sleep, or at least I think she does, because there are times when I'd be sleeping and just wake up in the middle of the night and see her in bed next to me, reading a book or just sitting in the dark. And she seems to be fine in the morning, no bags, no fatigue, just a face full of energy that's ready to take the day by storm. Honestly, I don't know how she does it. Oh yeah, there's also the dogs and cats thing. She hates pets with a passion for some reason. When I suggested a puppy for our shared apartment, she quickly shut it down. But I guess the hatred was mutual because every dog and cat that we encountered growled, hissed, snarled, or barked at her. There's also this one thing I noticed when we went camping this one time. I didn't think much of it, but it's starting to make more sense now that I think about it. After we parked our truck by the parking lot and signed off our names and headed into the woods, the forest was lively. Birds were singing, crickets and other insects were doing the usual anthem of the woods. But as we got to the epicenter of the noises, which is also the spot where we decided to set up, the noises just suddenly stopped. Nothing. No birds, no insects, just eerie silence with an ominous breeze coming through. Got real quiet suddenly, didn't it? I said. But what she said next threw me off completely. That's just what happens when I'm around. You get used to it after a while. Her face was blank when she said that. No smile and not even her usual snarky cringe she does usually. She was dead serious. I never really thought that much about it at first, but I've been online recently and have seen multiple videos about skinwalkers, wendigos, and other paranormal stuff. A forest going quiet out of nowhere, according to a video I watched, is not a good sign, and it got me thinking, was something in the area where we were, or was the woods reacting to her? I'm still on edge now, looking at her with that smile that I've come to find disturbing recently. I'll update as soon as I can if I find out more. Okay, here goes the next story. My girlfriend blinks wrong. I don't know if it started recently or if I just didn't notice before, but my girlfriend blinks wrong. You know how the upper eyelid usually closes and covers more of the eye than the lower one? Well, sometimes she does it backwards, like her eyes turn inside out to blink. It's just a tiny detail. She's beautiful and everything, but it's like that thing they say about not noticing something because you don't pay attention. Like when you start counting all the red cars on the highway and suddenly you see a lot of them. She blinks like that a lot. It's like a small stain on a big white canvas that you can't stop staring at. At first it was only sometimes, at once every few days or when we were alone. That's why it took me so long to really notice. I can't stop seeing it now. When we watch movies, when we're about to eat, when we're alone in the room, I can't stop see it. I even mentioned it to some friends when we have in common. No one else seems to notice. They think I'm imagining things. And the strangest part is when we're around other people who might notice, she doesn't do it at all. Family gatherings, outings with friends, public places, no backwards blink. It's like she knows when to stop, so everyone thinks it's just in my head. I start doubting myself, but when it's just the two of us, there it is again. What scares me the most is I can't bring myself to mention, not because she stops me, but because every time I'm about to say something, fear grabs me. It's like some part of me knows she knows I know, and that she's just waiting for me to admit it so she can finally tell me the truth. And I don't want to know the truth. Once standing in front of the mirror, I saw her reflection. She didn't blink, she just stared, and then she said softly, "Stop ignoring it." Okay, here goes the next story. Beware the harrow. I'm not a storyteller, which is fine, because this isn't a story, it's an account of what happened to me and my best friend 3 years ago. I'm writing it down now because therapy and medication hasn't helped me much. Maybe if I was honest with my therapist about what really happened, it would be more effective, but I think they just think I was lying or crazy. So I'll write my confessions here. I might delete it when I'm done, but I doubt it. It's not a real confession if no one hears it. Instead, I'll post it somewhere on the internet anonymously. People won't believe it, but that's on them, right? And maybe it'll finally be enough. I don't know what was in that house before I convinced Marcy we should go there. I swear to God I didn't. Sure, we'd both heard stories about it. Someone died there, maybe killed themselves, and maybe it was haunted. But it was a small town kid bullshit haunted. There were probably a dozen places across the country with stories like it attached to them. And even growing up, we hadn't really believed there was anything in any of those places beyond some mice and maybe a raccoon or snake. The stories were told by parents to entertain and warn us away from dangerous abandoned places, and they were passed between us kids for much the same reaction. The idea of something dark and magical and dangerous was appealing, even if we didn't believe it in our heart of hearts. By the time Marcy and I were home for Christmas break on our senior year of college, you'd think we would have outgrown some of that. But being back together always set us back a few years, and this was our last Christmas, where the routine of college and coming home for the holidays guaranteed us a week together again. There was a bit of unspoken desperation between us, the shadowy fear that after fully entering the adult world we might grow apart. Maybe the fear is what pushed me to go to that house, to see if I could still convince her to do stupid stuff and have fun in the process. And maybe that's why she said yes, because like me, she was afraid of losing what we did. Either way, it only took me a few minutes of taking it up on a boring Thursday night before we got into my truck and headed toward where the house sat crouched at the edge of town. The house had no name, no grand history that we knew about other than the shabby stories of possible deaths and ghosts. It was a large house built in what some people call Victorian, but it was really just a mismatch of curves and straight edges and styles of a big wrap around Porsche rows of narrow windows on the upper floors that somehow reminded me of the gill sets on a shark. At one time it'd been white, but that night it looked like a sullen gray that seemed to softly glow in the silver of moonlight we had to see by. It was like some bioluminescent mushroom that had grown up from the guts of some deep cave instead of having been built and lived in by people. I remember shaking my head as we stood out at the road, wondering where all these strange thoughts were coming from. Sharks and fungus, and Marcy was already walking up the overgrown driveway. "What are you doing?" I hissed the words at a whisper, though we were at least half a mile from the next house, and no one was going to care about us poking around there anyway. She looked back at me with a smirk. "You're the one that wanted to do this, pussy. Let's get in there and bust those ghosts." I felt my heart speed up slightly as I forced myself forward with a grimace. "Fine, hotshot. Let's see how you do when we get in there and a bat attacks your ass." She was terrified of bats, and I knew it, and she knew I knew it. Using her middle finger, she blew me a kiss as she reached the bottom of the porch steps. "Whatever. You see a bat coming, I expect you to take the hit for me. I'm not getting rabies on." Her smile faded as she turned to look up at the house, and then back to me. "What's wrong?" She shook her head. "I don't know. It just feels weird." Stepping up onto the porch, she paused for a moment before beckoning me to come up where she was. I did, and as soon as I started stepping onto the porch, I knew what she meant. It wasn't a specific sense or something, not a smell or a sound of whatever. It wasn't even tied to a particular sensation or emotion other than some sense of alertness and fear that wasn't there before. Like an antelope that raises its head nervously, knowing danger is near without understanding more. It was more the absence of a thing, an unnatural stillness. I'd call it a void, but that doesn't seem right, because part of the problem is the sense that the place wasn't empty, just almost empty. I know hearing this you think there was no way we'd go further, right? We'd run back to my truck and go, except everything I'm describing now is my interpretation years later, based off of memory and hindsight. At the time, I don't know, maybe it was us being stupid or too cynical or not wanting to look scared in front of the other one. Maybe we were being drawn in. All I know for sure is that when I met Marcy's eyes and nodded that I felt it too. Neither of us mentioned leaving, instead we just held hands and walked up to the front door. The door was made of thick wood, strips of faded red paint running down and pulling its color around a rusty brass latch handle that I felt myself hoping would be locked. But of course not. The latch pushed down with the slightest press on my thumb, and when I pulled on the door, it opened easily with a soft, dusty squeal. "Is this trespassing? Is this a crime?" I looked over to see a mixture of worry, hope, and fear on Marcy's face. She wanted me to say yes as much as I wanted the door to be locked. Instead, I shrugged. "I mean, we don't have permission, but whose property is it? No one lives here or keeps it up. Does it count as trespassing when it's abandoned? Maybe technically, but..." I left it hanging, waiting for her to pick up the thread. I honestly think if she'd bit just then, I'd have left. Instead, her shoulders slumped a little, and she gave a shrug. "Yeah, I don't know. I guess let's get this over with." Getting out her flashlight, she shined it inside, lighting up a long, empty entry hall with doors along both sides. Tightening her grip on my hand, she pulled me inside. The hall gave me some hope at first. It wasn't clean. There were thick layers of dust and dirt everywhere, but there was no junk, no signs of disrepair, not even dead bugs or mouse droppings that I could see. Marcy noticed it too and poked me in the side. "Isn't this weird?" I glanced at her and then back to the roving pool of light from my old flashlight. "What?" "It's so clean. I mean, not clean, but empty. How isn't there any trash or roaches or whatever?" I shrugged. "Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they're further in?" She snorted. "Yay," shining her light to the right. We headed into the first doorway. It was immediately clear that it wasn't empty, but that it wasn't junked either. It was full of dusty furniture that seemed to be in good condition, except everything was upside down. The table, the chairs, the sideboard, even the oriental rug in the center of the room that much of the other furniture rested on had all been flipped upside down. And not in some jumbled pile, but with everything pretty much in the same position they'd be if they were right side up. It was so odd that I found it disorienting, my mind trying to reconcile what I was seeing while coming up with some explanation for why it would be like that. "Why is it like this?" I heard an uncertain tremor in Marcy's voice. I shook my head. "I don't know. I mean, the furniture is kind of weird, but why do the rug like that too?" I saw her nod at the corner of my eye as she started backing up. "Let's try a different room, okay?" I didn't argue as we passed back into the hall and across to the other side. This room was empty too, except for two dark blotches. One was on the carpet near the far wall, while the other was a few feet over on the wall itself and going down into the carpet below. Jesus, do you think those are bloodstains? Marcy nodded. Maybe. It could be something else, rust or water damage or something, but nothing really seems in bad shape. She glanced back behind us to the other room. Are we done or do we look around more? My tongue felt dry in my throat. Maybe we go down the hall to one more room and then head out. Sound good? She gave us a nervous smile. Sure, let's just hurry. We stuck to the left side of the hall, and this time we found what had once probably been a normal living room. It had a sofa, a recliner, and a couple of tables, and across from that was a television. One of those giant rear projections TVs that was probably really nice 30 years ago. All of it was sitting upside down. The furniture, the rugs, even the pictures on the walls were all upside down. We stood there together, moving our flashlights around and staring in growing confusion and fear at what we were seeing. None of this made sense. Some of these things, the angles they were sitting at, it didn't even make sense that they'd be sitting up after so long. The dining room chairs had at least been partially propped up against the legs of the table, but here, I didn't know how the recliner and TV were even balanced like that. Marcy squeezed my hand hard. Let's get the fuck out of here. I didn't argue, and we immediately backed out of the room and turned to head to the front door, our lights flashing across the walls of the hallway as we prepared to run out. In those streaks of light, I saw several things at once. First, the front door, which we left open, was now shut. Second, something was written on the inside of the door, though it was too far away to read. Third, I saw someone move at the edge of the darkness. I pulled on Marcy's hand to make sure she didn't start forward as I leaned closer to whisper, I think someone is in here with us. When I glanced at her, she was still staring forward, moving her flashlight around, but she gave me a quick, trembling nod as a single tear ran down her cheek. Do we try to go out to the front, or... She nodded again, her voice barely audible. We don't know what's further back. We try the door, and if it doesn't work, we break a window and climb out. Giving a small shudder, she added, the room with the stains, we can use our flashlights. The other one is where it was standing. Heart pounding in my ears, I nodded and gave her hand another squeeze. You stay here and look out while I go get the door open. Marcy looked at me with a frown. No, we go together, stay together. With that, she pulled me toward the front door, shining her light into the dining room. And when we didn't see anyone there, she shined it around behind us. I reached out for the door as my eyes landed on the words scratched into the white paint on the inside. Beware the horror. It made me hesitate for a moment, but I pushed all my questions aside and grabbed the knob, turning it hard while yanking at the door. It didn't budge. What the fuck? It's coming. Mary's voice was right behind me, still a whisper, but high and terrified. I looked behind me, past her, but I didn't see anything. Where? I yanked, and twisted the knob again while trying to see what she was talking about. Oh god, it's reaching out! My body was vibrating with adrenaline, and I could hear the static of fear wanting to become shock crackling in my ears. Marcy, I don't see it. She let out a gasp and started coughing hard, a deep hacking cough that doubled her over as her light bounced around the walls. I reached out to her, eyes looking everywhere as my other hand gave one last desperate tug on the door. It opened easily out into the world. Grabbing Marcy, I ran her outside and back out to the truck, getting her in and buckled before going around and getting into drive. She was still coughing, but only a little now, and she hadn't said anything else. When I asked her if she was okay, she just nodded without looking up at me, and I decided it was better to get away and then ask her more questions after we were somewhere else. So I drove us back into town. I thought about going to my house or hers, but I didn't want to wait that long to check on her again. Pulling into a well-lit gas station, I parked in front of the store and looked over at her. Are you okay? She sat silent for a few moments before turning to look at me. I don't think so. Her voice sounded hoarse and her eyes were wet, though I wasn't sure if it was tears or just from coughing so hard. Do you think you're sick, like you're having an allergic reaction to something? Reaching up to scratch the back of her neck, she shook her head. No, it's not like that. I saw that thing coming towards us. I nodded, reaching out to touch her arm. I know, I couldn't see it or find it maybe, I don't know. It was all so fast. What was it? Still rubbing her neck, she shrugged. I don't know, it was like a shadow or like a dust cloud, except it was moving itself and had a shape that kept changing, like it was a thing, not a cloud. And her lips began trembling again. It was reaching out. It touched me. Fuck, okay, do you want me to take you to a hospital or something? Marcy shook her head. No, look at my fucking neck, okay? Something back there hurts, like fuck, and I can't feel something back there. She turned in her seat to put her back facing me as she pulled down the neck of her shirt. Ah, do you see anything back there? Turning on the overhead light, I leaned forward and sucked in a breath. There were raised marks, lines on the back of her neck just below the hairline. Not just lines, but they were fucking letters. N-I-W. Just listen, try not to freak out. It'll be okay, we'll figure this out. What the fuck is it? It looks like letters. N-I-W. I don't know what it means, and the N is turned wrong. But they look like letters in your skin, like raised from your skin. She was breathing fast, panicked breaths now. What the fuck? Oh god. I don't know, we need to take you somewhere. Get help. You're sure it's letters, not just a scratch or a rash? No, I mean, it really looks like letters. Either N-I-W, or if it's backwards, it could be win. She froze just then. It's backwards, because oh god, I can still feel it. It's writing from the inside and I can fucking feel it. Oh Jesus. Oh no, we've had... Marcy jerked and I reached out to touch her, comfort her, help her in some way. Though I don't know how, but then I saw it myself and my hand froze. Something inside pressing outward, making its mark as it drew another letter into her skin while I watched. What is it? What is it writing? Everything was static to me now. I could barely think, barely hear, barely do anything except try my best to not jump out of the truck and run. Fuck it, it's an E. It looks like it's a fucked up E. Do you want to go to the hospital or where? My eyes were still transfixed to her skin, bulging out as the last of the lines of the letter were drawn against her hands. This had all to be a nightmare, none of it could be real. I saw a sudden change in Marcy as she shifted back to sitting normally in the seat. Her breathing was quiet now, and when she spoke her voice was hoarse but calm. No, I can go home. I think it's okay now. I frowned, my worry and concern pushing through my fear for the moment. Are you sure? That's not normal. Marcy shrugged, probably just stress. The body can do weird things when you're really scared or stressed. If it's not gone tomorrow, I can go to the doctor then. I should have pushed harder. I knew that I should have, but I also knew what I'd just seen, and in that moment I was so scared I just wanted to see her home safely and run away. Wake up the next day and have it all be a bad dream. So instead I took her home and let her out. She walked away without another word, up the well-manicured walk to her parents' front door. I almost called out to her, told her to come back, but I didn't. I was too afraid, so I didn't. Instead I went home, and for hours I sat alone in my old bedroom with the lights on, going between wanting to text or call her and being scared she'd call or text me instead. It was nearly sunrise when I finally fell asleep, and a couple of hours later I woke up to my mother on the phone, talking loudly and starting to cry. After I left her, Marcy had went inside her house. When the mailman came by the next morning, he saw the front door was open and what looked like bloody footprints leading out of the house and into the world. He called the cops, and when they went inside, they found what she had done. Her parents were in the living room, her little brother was up in his bed, all three ripped open and hollowed out like you might field dress a deer. Outside of those bloody footprints, they never found a trace of her again. They talked to me about it, of course, they talked to everybody. For my part, I told the part they'd believed, that we'd gone out, riding around, and then I dropped her back off at home. She hadn't said anything about hurting anybody, and I hadn't known she was going to do what she did. All of that was true. I didn't tell them about the abandoned house we stopped at or the thing that had lived inside, about what happened to my best friend, about how I abandoned her once I truly understood. Because Marshall had been partially right, the letters were backwards to me because it was writing from the inside, but it wasn't writing nonsense, and it wasn't writing win or whine. It was giving me a warning that like everything else was upside down. Okay, and here's the next and final story. Chiseled. Mariana was broke when she answered the flyer. Live model wanted, could pay. The studio was hidden, dim, reeking of stone dust. The sculptor, Anselm, looking her up and down, nodded once and put her on a platform surrounded by unfinished statues. The work was simple. Stand still for hours while he carved, but he watched her like a butcher studies a carcass, not a model. When she sifted, his voice cut the air. Still. He paid in cash, enough to keep her coming back. After a few sessions, her body began to change. Her collarbones jutted out like knives. Her jaw was sharp, her stomach sunken. Her reflection didn't look like weight loss, it looked carved. Then she saw the statue he was making of her. The arms were too long, the waist impossibly thin. The face stretched in ways that didn't look human, but when she checked herself in the mirror the next day, she looked closer to that figure than the one she remembered. "What are you doing to me?" she asked. "I'm not doing anything," Anselm asked. Anselm said, "I'm uncovering you." By the fourth week, pain set in. Her back cracked loudly whenever she stood. Her skin split across her ribs in fine white lines, flakes of dust shaking loose. She clawed at herself one night and peeled off a strip of skin the size of her hand. No blood underneath, just pale, hard stone. She screamed, but the scream echoed strangely, like it was bouncing inside her skull instead of escaping. At the studio, she pulled a sheet from a statue in the corner. Underneath was a figure with its mouth wide open, teeth and tongue perfectly formed, eyes frozen in panic. It was too detailed, too carved, too exact. She staggered back. They were alive. They still are, Ansem said from behind her. His face was calm, almost tender, and soon so will you. Her jaw cracked open mid-word while stone teeth forced their way past her own. Her skin tore down her arms in long strips, dangling like old wallpaper. Chunks of her thighs broke off and hit the floor, shattering into powder. Marina fell, writhing, her muscles hardening into immobility. She tried to claw her face, but her fingers fused together, locked in a permanent curl. Her scream turned into a ragged hiss as her lungs calcified. Alsem watched, brushing marble dust from his hands. Perfect, he whispered. Her eyes were the last to go. She could still see the rows of figures around her, each one staring back, each one alive but unable to move, their faces locked in eternal terror. Now she was one of them. That was all of the stories for today, and I hope you've enjoyed them.